Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc Beef Podcast, for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Catherine Egan, and on this week's episode, I'm joined by future beef programme participant Cathal Irwin from County Mayo to get an insight into grassland management on his farm this spring and planning the year ahead for silage 2022. Cathal, you're very welcome. Can you talk me through your beef system?
I'm based in Castlebar, County Mayo, as you just said. I have a small suckler to store farm. I have 18 hectares of, I suppose, heavy land is best describing it. I currently, as I said, bring calves from store to beef and usually sell them in the local markets at around 18 to 20 months. I'm currently stocked, I suppose, at around 3 livestock units per hectare.
Cathal, what has led you to choose this system?
Well, Catherine, I suppose, firstly, I would typically sell the stores around September time. Ideally, I'd like to be able to take them to finish, but based on, I suppose, the heavy nature of our land, I can't finish them off grass. So I know ideally they need to go into the shed. One of the major constraints on the farm is slurry storage. So I have no choice. I can't really afford to put cattle in for 6 weeks because we're quite tight on slurry capacity. So my only choice at that point is to sell them. Now, I do plan in the next year or two to try and remedy that and maybe put up another shed.
And currently, breeding is started on the farm, or how's that been going so far?
Well, I typically calf the cows around December and January. So I'm nearly completely finished. I think I've only one animal left. So it's gone all right. Look, we had some upsets like you can have any year. But I suppose I'm actually now at the stage where I started breeding again, and the bull is actually with the cows on the slats. The reason I suppose I calf the cows so early is I like to have a calf that, let's say, hits the grass around April, and actually can do something with the grass, not, let's say, I suppose spend those first valuable months of maybe April, May, June running around the field playing. Well, sort of when the calves are at 4, 5, 6 months old, they can do something with the grass, and I find that there's a better drive in them and have a heavier Weanling coming in the shed in the back end of the year.
Most definitely, and it's fair to say no two springs are the same. What have you learned from previous years that you're cautious about this spring?
Well, I suppose last year I actually had the cattle out I had the stores out on the 24th of February. I think I had to rehouse them at different points for about 10 days, let's say between the 24th of February and the 30th of April. I found though last year I did let my cows and stores out at let's say around mid-March together. I found that my silage ground probably incurred too much damage in that period. So I don't think I'm going to graze my silage ground this year. I'm just going to graze let my stores out early, let them over to the grazing ground. I'm going to leave my silage ground untouched and try and go for as early cut as possible. That's sort of my plan for this year.
And with recent heavy rainfall, Cathal, what's the plan for grazing for the coming weeks?
Well, last week, the conditions were very tough, to be fair, and we'll say we're best in heavy land here in Mayo. Nothing is out yet, but I'm just looking ahead at the weather forecast for the coming week. I'm hoping that I'll be able to get cattle to grass this week. My plan is to try and get the stores out, or the Weanlings out this weekend or next weekend at the latest, and then in a couple of weeks' time afterwards, I'd hope to let the cows out. It's all dependent on the cows and calves out. It's all dependent on ground conditions, really. If I think the ground can take them, I'll let them out. I am aware that I'm going to need to rehouse the cattle again at some point, more than likely, but if I have to, I have to. It's not the end of the world.
And what paddock will they be turning them out to first to start off the rotation?
Well, I suppose I'm going to probably start with my reseeded drier fields first. My plan, I suppose, is to try and get them grazed as quick as I can, because I know especially the reseeded grass will come back a lot quicker. Last year I noticed that the reseeded fields I had by, let's say, I can't even remember the exact date, but maybe by mid-April or mid to April to mid-May, my reseeded ground had grown 4,000 kilos of dry matter, whereas my old pasture had only grown 1,600. So I was going into them maybe for my third time, where my older pastures, I was only going into maybe my first time, or barely struggling to get back into my second time. So that's where I plan to go, and maybe then follow up with slurry or urea, depending on ground conditions. That I suppose will dictate it.
And with high fertilizer prices this spring, soil fertility is very important. And as you mentioned, picking your paddocks that are producing the most grass. What is the fertility status on the farm?
Well, I was lucky enough there. We just done a soil analysis of the whole farm. Look, it's a bit of a mixed bag. It's not too bad. My pH isn't bad. On my clay soil, most of my pH is around 6.3. And look, I've brown peat soils as well, and that they're sitting a little bit lower than I'd like. They're around 5.3 pH. Generally, the P is okay on the farm. It's at index 3 or 4 in most cases, bar a couple of paddocks. But one thing it did highlight is that my K is lower than it should be. So on quite a few of the paddocks, well over half, I'm at index 1 or 2, bar the silage ground. So that's definitely an issue that I'm going to have to redress with probably in the back end with maybe 0.050 or something like that. Now I do plan probably on spreading a bit of lime as well in the back end to probably maintain my current pH.
And with the fertilizer prices this spring, what is your plan now for the first round of fertilizer?
Well, I suppose I do plan, let's say, after my first grazings, to go out with less slurry. So obviously low emission slurry spreading, if the ground conditions will allow it, and then I'm going to go out with urea. Or if I can't get in with slurry, I'll go in with urea. I did manage to get some unprotected urea this year. Last year I only spread protected urea, but I got it harder to get it, but I was able to source some unprotected urea earlier on. So I think I'll use that for now.
And when it comes to the silage ground, I know you've mentioned you're going to leave it closed now and cut it early. What's your plan?
Well, I suppose for the silage ground, we spread just towards the end of January. That's a fine spell of weather. Before it ended, we spread 2,500 gallons of slurry per acre on that. My plan for that is then to go back in with probably 2 rounds of fertilizer. I'm going to go in with urea first, probably around Paddy's Day. And I'm going to come back in then, let's say, I'd say early to mid-May or early to mid-April, not that late at all. I'm going to come out another round of probably nitrogen again. And try and cut the silage as early as I can in May, because I seen last year I did get caught, and I know, as you said, no 2 springs are the same, but I think if you're ready to go when the weather is there, at least you have some chance, But if you're waiting for maybe either trying to bulk your crop up or trying to get your nitrogen down, you can be caught.
And will you be completing a fodder budget for this winter?
I generally do, to be honest with you. I sort of have it worked out, how much, how many bales I need, and generally I need, let's say, 200 to 250 bales. And look, we're in the west of Ireland. You always sort of have to budget for possibly a 7-month winter. So that's the way I generally work, to be honest with you. Now we try and get out in 5 if you can, but it can go to 7 months. We've seen it go to 7 months in the past.
I suppose for the year ahead and trying to reduce the amount of costs on farm, you have a good paddock system. What benefit has it been to managing grass for you, Cathal?
We put in the paddock system in 2015. I suppose it allowed me really to maximize the ground that I have. I found that I could get the very most out of, grow as much grass as I possibly could on the farm. I always sort of was of the opinion that it was better, let's say for me and for my pocket, probably to grow as much grass as I could rather than having to go out renting land and or maybe buying land. The cost is obviously huge to that. So my sort of attitude has been, put the paddocks in place, grow as much grass as I can, and try and get as much thrive on the cattle as possible. At the minute we have about, I said there's only about 18 hectares, but I think it's about 45 acres. So if that's split into about 23 paddocks, and the cattle are in about 1.6 to 2 hectare or 1.6 to 2 acre paddock, and I generally tend to graze the cows and the bullocks together, and I keep the heifers in a separate out farm. And it tends to work well for me, to be honest with you. They just go around the grazing platform, and I go in after each grazing and I spread maybe 15-20 units of nitrogen, and try and just keep on top of the grass and keep in control of the grass. I suppose other years grass has sometimes got away with me and maybe grown sometimes too much grass, and I'm trying, I suppose the last year or two has been a focus of mine, trying to grow the right height of grass and the right quality of grass and get better clean outs and all that sort of, I suppose, important stuff.
Utilisation of grass will be a key focus for many farmers this year, Cathal. Thanks very much. We look forward to following your progress in the future beef programme.
Thanks, Catherine.
That's all for this week's episode, and my thanks to Cathal for joining me on the show. You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Cathal Irwin, and thanks for listening.